Vin Diesel had no idea what he was about to hear that evening. As he casually walked into his own restaurant, the soft clink of glasses and murmurs of conversation filled the air. The restaurant, one of his most prized establishments, had always been a sanctuary for his hard work, but tonight, something felt different. As he walked through the bustling space, the sound of a soft sob caught his attention. He froze, his hand still on the door, as he looked around, trying to pinpoint the source. It was a sound that didn't belong in his carefully curated world. The noise was coming from the far corner, behind the kitchen door. His heart skipped a beat. It wasn't the noise of a waiter dropping a tray or a kitchen mishap. It was someone in pain. Moving silently, Vin followed the sound, his mind racing with questions. Was it a mistake? A misunderstanding? He walked deeper into the staff-only area, the hallway narrow and dimly lit. And then, there she was, Lena Harris, a young woman in her early 20s, hunched over the counter, her shoulders shaking with sobs. He had seen her before, of course. She was one of his servers, always polite, always efficient, but he never knew this side of her. She had never once let him see her struggle, never once shown the weight of the world that seemed to be crushing her. Until now, the sight of her vulnerability hit him like a ton of bricks. He hadn't prepared for this. He stood there for a moment, unsure of what to do. Should he step forward? Should he say something? He wasn't used to this. The world he inhabited was full of confidence, of power, of control. But here, in this small, dimly lit corner of his restaurant, he felt completely out of his depth. "Hey," he finally said, his voice quieter than usual. Lena didn't look up, her sobs only growing louder. Vin took a step closer, his mind racing. He had no idea what was going on, but he knew he couldn't just stand there. "Lena, what's wrong?" His voice was a gentle whisper now, breaking through the tension in the air. She slowly raised her head, her tear-streaked face meeting his eyes. She didn't speak, but her eyes told him everything. She was drowning. "I'm sorry," she finally managed to choke out. "I didn't mean to break down like this." Her words stung more than he expected. He had no idea the pressure she was under, no idea what she was carrying. This was the moment when everything would change. The man who had built empires, who had commanded respect in every room he entered, was now standing in front of someone who needed help. And for the first time in his life, he realized that all the power he had wasn't enough to fix what was broken here. Vin Diesel stood there, frozen in the silence that followed Lena's tears. His eyes couldn't leave her face. The raw emotion in her eyes left him speechless. He had met many people in his life, people who had the world at their feet, people who had it all, but none of them had ever felt like this. None of them had ever seemed so vulnerable, so broken. He could see the weight of her exhaustion in the way her shoulders slumped, the way her hands gripped the countertop as though it were the only thing holding her together. His thoughts raced. How had he missed this? How had he not noticed the pain she carried with her every day? But the truth was, he had been too busy, too wrapped up in his own life to pay attention to the people around him. But now, seeing Lena like this, he couldn't ignore it anymore. "Lena," he said softly, stepping closer. His voice, usually filled with authority, was now soft, almost vulnerable. "What's going on? What's hurting you?" She let out a shaky breath and wiped her eyes, trying to compose herself. It was clear she didn't want to break down in front of him, but the effort was too much. I don't know if I can keep going," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I'm trying so hard to do my job, to keep everything together. But it feels like no one sees me. No one cares." Her words hit him like a ton of bricks. No one cared. He had always assumed that people who worked for him had everything they needed, that they were taken care of. He never stopped to think about the struggles they faced. In all his years of managing his businesses, he had never thought about the pressure his employees might be under, the burden of their own lives. "I'm sorry," Vince said, his words carrying a weight of sincerity. "I had no idea you were going through this." Lena shook her head, trying to hide the tears that kept falling. "It's not your fault," she said quickly. "I've just been pushing myself too hard. I don't want anyone to know. I don't want to burden anyone with my problems." But that was the moment Vin realized something. He had been living his life in a bubble, surrounded by people who worked for him, who depended on him, but he never once stopped to see them as people. He had become so focused on his own world that he had missed the struggles of the people who made his world possible. He couldn't let that continue. "Lena," he said firmly, You don't have to do this alone. We're a team here, and I'm going to make sure you get the help and support you need." He meant it. The words felt right, and for the first time in a long time, he felt like he was doing something that truly mattered. He took a step back, looking at Lena with a newfound respect, and in that moment, he knew he had to change. He wasn't just going to be the boss anymore. He was going to be the leader his team deserved. Vin Diesel knew he couldn't just walk away from this. Lena's tears, her words, the rawness of her emotion, they had all struck a chord deep inside him. He had built an empire, surrounded by the wealth and power he had worked so hard for. But what good was all of it if he couldn't help the people who made it all possible? The realization hit him harder than any business deal, harder than any premiere or press event. He was the boss, sure, but he had forgotten what it meant to be human. "Lena," he began, his voice firm but compassionate, "you're part of this team. And no one, especially not you, should feel like they're carrying everything on their own." She looked up at him, her tear-filled eyes wide with disbelief. No one had ever spoken to her like that. She had always been just a face in the crowd, a server in a busy restaurant. To hear the owner of the place, Vin Diesel, no less, acknowledge her was like a dream. "I've been too caught up in my own world," he continued, his words full of sincerity. "I never stopped to really see the people around me. I know I've made a mistake, and I'm going to make it right." For the first time in a long while, Lena felt seen. The words weren't just comforting, they were genuine. She had spent so much of her life trying to prove her worth, to push past the walls of indifference that surrounded her. But here, in this moment, it felt like something had finally shifted. She wasn't just a servant or a worker to be overlooked. She was a person, worthy of respect and care. "You don't have to carry this burden alone," Vin said softly. "I'll make sure we do better here. For you. For everyone." His words resonated deeply within her. She had always struggled with feeling like she didn't belong, like she was invisible. But in that moment, she realized that maybe, just maybe, there was a way forward where she wouldn't have to fight so hard to be acknowledged. Over the next few days, Vin took action. He spoke with the management, he spoke with the staff, and he began to make changes, small ones at first, but they were changes that mattered. He ensured that everyone, from the top down, had a voice. He made sure that every person working there felt appreciated, seen, and heard. It wasn't just about making his restaurant a success. It was about making it a place where people could thrive, not just survive. Lena felt the shift in the air. The once tense, cold atmosphere of the restaurant started to warm. Staff members who had once felt ignored began to speak up, to share their ideas, and to support one another. It was a subtle change, but it was there, and it was enough to give Lena hope. She began to feel a sense of pride in her work, a sense of belonging that had been missing for so long. The change wasn't just in the restaurant, it was in her. She was no longer just a server. She was a part of something bigger, something that valued her, and that made all the difference. Days passed, and the change in the restaurant became more and more noticeable. Vin Diesel walked through the dining area with a newfound sense of pride, not just in the food served or the ambience of the place, but in the way the staff interacted with each other. There was a new energy, a sense of camaraderie that hadn't been there before. Lena, once a quiet observer of the daily grind, now moved with confidence. She was no longer just a server. She was a key part of the team, her contributions valued by her colleagues. The transformation wasn't just about the physical environment, but also the atmosphere. Employees who had once felt overlooked and underappreciated now smiled and exchanged jokes during their breaks. There was a sense of belonging, of shared purpose, and it made all the difference. Vin observed all of this with a quiet satisfaction. He had done something he wasn't sure he was capable of before. He had opened his eyes and really seen the people who made his success possible. He had given them a chance to feel like they mattered. One evening, as the restaurant buzzed with activity, Vin noticed Lena standing at the bar, laughing with a few of the other servers. She had a drink in her hand, her head thrown back in genuine amusement. For a moment, he stood there, watching her, and something inside him stirred. He felt proud, not because of the success of his business, but because of the person Lena had become. She had found her voice, and in doing so, she had given others the courage to find theirs. Vin knew that the changes he had made, the adjustments to the way he ran his business, had worked. But what mattered most to him now was seeing the people he worked with grow, seeing them shine in ways he had never expected. Lena caught his eye across the room and smiled, her face lighting up with a warmth that hadn't been there before. It was a small moment, but it spoke volumes. She had come a long way from the shy, broken woman he had met just a few weeks ago. She was stronger, more confident, and above all, she felt valued. And that, to Vin, was more important than any business deal or success he had ever achieved. As the night wore on and the restaurant emptied, Vin found himself sitting alone at the bar, sipping on a drink. The lights above glowed softly, casting a warm glow over the polished surfaces of the bar. The place was quiet now, a stark contrast to the bustling energy of earlier. He leaned back, looking around, and a sense of peace washed over him. He had found something he didn't even know he was looking for, true connection, not just with his employees, but with himself. In helping Lena and the others find their own strength, he had unlocked something within himself. And for the first time in a long time, he felt like he was exactly where he needed to be. Vin Diesel sat at the bar, staring into his glass. The night had quieted down, and the usual hum of activity had turned into a soft echo that made the space feel almost peaceful. He had always been a man of action, someone who thrived in the chaos of his career and life. But here, in the stillness of his restaurant, he found a sense of calm he hadn't known he was missing. He thought about the changes he had made, the new way of looking at things. It wasn't just about business anymore. It was about people. It was about respect. He took a slow sip, savoring the moment, when he heard footsteps approach. Looking up, he saw Lena walking toward him. There was a confidence in her step now, something that hadn't been there before. She wasn't the same person he had first met, timid, unsure of herself. Now, she carried herself like someone who knew her worth, who knew she belonged. "Hey," she said, her voice steady, but there was warmth in it. "Can I sit?" Vin smiled, gesturing to the seat next to him. "Of course." She took a seat, and for a moment, the two of them just sat there in silence, the quiet between them comfortable. It wasn't awkward. It was peaceful, like they both knew they had come a long way. After a moment, Lena spoke again, her tone lighter. "I just wanted to say thank you," she said, looking at him. "For everything. For seeing me, really seeing me. I can't tell you how much that means." Vin didn't know what to say. The words she had just spoken meant more than any thank you he had ever received. He had given her a chance, but she had done the rest. She had found her voice. She had found herself. And that was more than he could have hoped for. "You don't need to thank me," he said, his voice low. "You did all the work. You just needed someone to believe in you." Lena smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. "Well, I'm glad you did. I feel like I can do anything now. Like I finally belong." Vin felt a swell of pride in his chest. He had always been proud of his accomplishments. But this was different. This wasn't just about him. It was about her. It was about them. And it made everything he had done worth it. As the night stretched on, Vin and Lena talked more, sharing stories of their lives, their dreams, and the paths that had brought them here. For the first time in a long time, Vin felt a sense of fulfillment that wasn't tied to his work or his success. It was tied to something far deeper, connection. He had built a place where people could thrive, but he had also built relationships that went beyond the surface. As the night ended and the last of the staff trickled out, Vin stood up, feeling a quiet sense of satisfaction. The restaurant was more than just a place to eat. It was a place where people found their worth, their confidence, and their strength. And it was all because of the people who made it possible. The ones like Lena, who had the courage to rise up and be seen. Weeks had passed since that evening, and the changes at the restaurant were undeniable. What had started as a shift in one person's perspective had rippled outward, touching everyone. Vin Diesel, once the powerful figure running the show from behind the scenes, now found himself standing alongside his team, working to create an environment where everyone felt valued. He had learned so much in such a short time, and with each passing day, he could see the transformation not only in the restaurant, but in the people who worked there. Lena had blossomed into a leader in her own right. She no longer just took orders and served food. She guided the new staff, helped resolve conflicts, and offered a shoulder to lean on when things got tough. She had found her purpose, her confidence, and it was contagious. Her strength, her kindness, her willingness to help others. It had become the heart of the restaurant. Vin had always known that a successful business needed good leadership, but he had never realized that the real strength of a team came from mutual respect, understanding, and support. He had made a habit of checking in with the staff every day, listening to their concerns, asking how he could make things better. It wasn't just about the food or the profits anymore. It was about making sure that everyone felt like they mattered. One afternoon, Vin stood in the kitchen, watching Lena as she guided a new server through the shift. She was calm, patient, and kind, just as she had been with him. She smiled at the young server, offering advice and encouragement. Vin couldn't help but smile to himself. It was a moment of pride for him, but more importantly, it was a moment of realization. This wasn't just a restaurant anymore. This was a place where people could grow, where they could find themselves, and where they could learn the value of working together. The atmosphere had changed in ways Vin never expected. There was no more tension in the air. No more feeling like people were just there to get by. The team worked as a unit now, and their energy was contagious. The customers felt it too. They came for the food, yes, but they came back because of the atmosphere, the warmth that now radiated from every corner of the restaurant. It wasn't just about the meals. It was about the experience, the sense of belonging that everyone felt when they stepped through the door. Vin had learned that success wasn't measured solely by numbers or accolades. It was about the impact you had on others, the way you made them feel, the way you helped them grow. He had built a business that could stand the test of time, but more importantly, he had built a community that valued each person for who they were, and that made all the difference. One evening, as the restaurant wound down, Vin looked around the space, his heart swelling with pride. He saw the staff chatting with each other, laughing, sharing stories of their day. Lena was at the bar, talking to a regular customer who had become a friend over time. The place was buzzing with life, with energy. And for the first time in a long time, Vin felt at peace. The business he had built wasn't just a success. It was a place where people felt like they mattered. And in the end, that was what truly mattered to him. The days grew into weeks, and the transformation at the restaurant became a steady presence in Vin Diesel's life. It was no longer just a business to him. It had become a community, a place where every person mattered. The atmosphere, once tense and filled with unspoken pressure, was now alive with laughter, support, and shared purpose. He walked into the restaurant one afternoon, his footsteps light, a feeling of satisfaction filling his chest. The changes had not only affected his staff, but had shifted something deep inside him. He was a man of action, someone who had built an empire based on his ability to make things happen. But now, he realized that the greatest success wasn't just in the deals or the recognition. It was in the connections he had helped create, in the lives he had touched. Lena, who had once been a quiet, uncertain server, was now an essential part of that transformation. He had watched her grow, not just in confidence, but in her ability to lead, to inspire others. She had become a mentor to the new hires, someone who embodied the spirit of the restaurant, kindness, respect, and the belief that everyone had something valuable to offer. One evening, as the last of the dinner rush cleared out, Vin found himself in the kitchen, where Lena was checking in on the staff. She looked up as she noticed him and offered him a smile, the same smile that had become a symbol of the change she had helped create. "Everything's running smoothly," she said, her voice calm and assured. "The team's working together, and the customers are happier than ever." Vin smiled back, leaning against the counter. "I couldn't have done this without you." She shook her head, a modest smile on her face. "You believed in me when I didn't even believe in myself." Her words hit him harder than he expected. Lena had come so far, and it was clear that this restaurant, this team, was now a reflection of her growth as much as it was his. But Vin knew that he was just one part of the bigger picture. The real success came from the collective effort of the entire team, the cooks, the servers, the dishwashers, everyone who worked behind the scenes. They had all played a part in creating something greater than just a successful business. They had built a community, one that was grounded in respect and mutual support. As Vin stood there, watching Lena interact with the staff, he couldn't help but think about how far they had all come. He had started this journey thinking he was going to fix a problem, but what he had ended up doing was so much more. He had created a place where people could grow, where they could be seen for who they truly were. He knew that this was only the beginning. There were still challenges ahead, still moments where things wouldn't go as planned, but for the first time in a long time, Vin felt ready for whatever came next. Because he wasn't alone in this anymore. He had a team, a community, and together they would face whatever came their way. And as the last of the plates were cleared and the lights dimmed in the restaurant, Vin stood at the door for a moment, taking it all in. He wasn't just the owner of this place. He was a part of it, and that made all the difference. It had been months since the changes began, and the restaurant had become a true reflection of everything Vin Diesel had learned. He had started out focused on fixing his business, but what he had built was more than that. It was a place of growth, of connection, and of understanding. As the weeks passed, he saw the impact of those changes in more ways than he could have anticipated. Lena was flourishing, not only as a server but as a mentor, a leader. Her confidence had become the backbone of the restaurant. She was the one the new hires turned to for advice. She was the one who kept the team grounded when things got hectic. And Vin couldn't help but feel proud of her, proud of the woman she had become. But it wasn't just Lena. The entire team had transformed. There was a sense of pride in their work now. They weren't just showing up for a paycheck anymore. They were showing up because they knew their work mattered, because they knew they were valued. It was a feeling that Vin had worked hard to cultivate, and it was paying off. The customers could feel it too. They kept coming back. Not just for the food, but for the warmth, the energy that the staff exuded. It was the kind of place where people felt welcome the moment they stepped through the door. The kind of place where they could relax and enjoy a meal, knowing that the people serving them truly cared. One evening, as the restaurant buzzed with the usual energy, Vin found himself sitting at one of the tables, observing. He watched the staff work together seamlessly, helping each other out, laughing, sharing in the little moments that made the job worth it. He saw Lena in the corner, chatting with a customer, her smile bright and genuine. She had come so far, and it was clear that the work she had put in, the belief in herself that she had gained, was reflected in everything she did. As he sat there, he realized something important. He had created a place of success, yes, but more importantly, he had created a place where people could find their worth. It wasn't about the business deals or the accolades anymore. It was about the people, the ones who worked with him, who made this place what it was. And that was what made it all worthwhile. The shift had been gradual, almost imperceptible at times, but now, standing in the middle of his restaurant, Vin knew that it was real. This wasn't just about food or service. It was about creating an environment where people could thrive. And for the first time in a long time, he felt at peace with himself, with his life, and with the choices he had made. He had found something he hadn't known he was looking for, a deeper connection with the people around him, a sense of purpose beyond his own success. As the evening wore on and the last of the customers left, Vin stood by the door, looking out over the now empty restaurant. The space was quiet, but it was a peaceful kind of quiet. He had built something that would last, not just because it was successful, but because it had heart. And that, he realized, was the greatest achievement of all. As time passed, the restaurant continued to thrive. But more importantly, the transformation that had taken place in the people who worked there seemed to deepen with every passing day. Vin Diesel had often thought of success in terms of revenue, accolades, and recognition. But now, as he walked through the dining area one late evening, watching his staff interact, he realized the true measure of success was in something far more profound. It was in the way people treated each other, the way they worked together, and the way they built each other up. Lena, once the quiet server who had barely made a mark, was now one of the most respected members of the team. The transformation in her was nothing short of remarkable. She had gained confidence, not just in her role at the restaurant, but in herself. She had a sense of purpose now, something she had never felt before. And it wasn't just her. Everyone around her had felt the ripple effect. The once anxious and unsure staff members had found their confidence, their voice. They were no longer just workers fulfilling tasks. They were part of something bigger, something meaningful. It was as if the restaurant had become a place where people were given the space to grow, to believe in their potential, to feel valued. Vin watched as Lena offered encouragement to a new employee who had stumbled during their shift. He could see the care in her eyes as she reassured the young man, helping him learn from his mistake rather than belittling him. In that moment, he felt a swell of pride. She wasn't just teaching him how to do his job. She was teaching him how to be part of a team, how to support one another. That was what mattered. In the past, Vin had been consumed by his desire to expand, to grow his brand, to be the best. But now, He understood that true growth wasn't just about numbers. It was about the people, the heart of the business. That was what made everything worthwhile. As he watched the team work together that night, he couldn't help but reflect on how far they had come. He had built this place not with the intent to create just another restaurant, but with the intention to build something that would last. He wanted to create a space where people felt welcome, where they could find purpose, and where they could take pride in the work they did. The sense of belonging that now existed in the restaurant wasn't something that could be measured in dollars or reviews. It was something much more valuable. It was a feeling, a collective energy that no business model could have predicted. As the night came to a close and the last few customers trickled out, Vin found himself standing at the door again, just like the night he had first realized how much this restaurant meant to him. But this time, there was no uncertainty. He had built something real, something that wasn't just successful, it was full of heart. And in that moment, Vin knew that no matter what happened next, he had achieved something far greater than anything he could have imagined. He had created a community, and that was worth more than all the accolades in the world.